Welcome back to the Dr. Ed Show. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Dr. Rebecca Plute, talking about your health and wellness and how to get there, which is somewhat challenging sometimes. Dr. Plute, you are a founder of Paragon Personal Healthcare, located in Canonsburg, and that's a concierge medical practice. Big difference between a general practice and your concierge practice.
Yes.
So what does that actually mean, first of all, and then how do you become a patient with Paragon Personal Healthcare?
So in the healthcare, the conventional model right now is you go to the doctor's office and they see you and they bill your insurance for it, right? And that's what pays the practice. In concierge practices, it's a direct pay model. People pay me a monthly or annual fee, which is all on my website, so that it's all transparent. Like if you go to the doctor's office, you don't actually usually know what they're charging you or your insurance company or your copay. Like it's all kind of like becomes a gobbledygook formula. But in me, it says exactly what you're going to pay throughout the full year for my services. My services, instead of like a 5 or 10 quick minute in and out appointment, most of my patients I spend a half hour to an hour with each time, and which allows us to look at their health a little bit differently. I'm on call for my patients 24/7. They have my cell number. So that they can reach me, and they always see me. I have a PA that works with me also, so if I happen to be out of the office, she would see me, but everybody's routinely scheduled appointments is with me. And again, we can work on things. It's the custom version of your health. You know, what makes sense to you.
Personal.
Yeah, it's personal, right? That's where that name comes. So we're really shooting, and Paragon is a reference to the best, the ideal, right? So we're really shooting for, with where you are right now and what you're able to invest in becoming healthy. How do we take care of your health? How do we take care of any chronic illnesses or other problems that we have? And how do we get you, like the fundamental question, how do you get you the best health that you can be in for the body that you have?
So you call up and you make an initial appointment to basically have a one-on-one interview with each other?
Yeah.
Because I always say it's probably a good idea to interview the practitioner that's going to be helping you with your health and wellness, as well as you as the practitioner interviewing the patient, because sometimes there are patients that are not a good fit.
Yeah, and goodness of fit, this is a relationship like finding a business partner or finding, you know, a spouse or finding somebody to be on your, you know, intramural soccer team or whatever. That there has to be something where you can make decisions together and engage in a process in a way that both of you are comfortable to get, you know, good results, right? So in the conventional model, you look at somebody's profile, you think maybe they'll be good for me, I make an appointment, and they're like, oh no, that doctor, like we're on a different page, right? With me, you don't get charged for that. You come in, we talk to each other a little bit, we figure out if I have, you know, the expertise in the areas that you're looking for, and whether or not we have that like kind of personality match and value system match and those kind of things that are going to make this a successful relationship that, you know, preserves and improves your health, right?
So there's no insurance involvement, so you're not working through any third-party stuff, but what if I need a blood test or an x-ray or a CT scan or something?
Okay, so we always take people's insurance information, and this is why. For example, we generally draw blood on site unless it's a very specialized test that somebody has to go to a specialized lab or hospital for. And we submit their insurance information to Quest, and then Quest bills the insurance for the laboratory service. If you were to need an MRI, I would talk with your insurance company. I would find out which facilities that they had contracts with to allow you to get your MRI and get it covered for you. And I would give them the medical justifications that they need for why we're ordering that MRI. So it's not insurance free. I work with the insurances. I just don't personally bill the insurance. That's a direct pay service that, you know, you are paying to me.
So if people have medical coverage, their tests are generally covered according to their plan?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And if they go to the hospital, their hospital bill is going to be covered by their plan.
So in this practice, you're helping people that have cardiac issues, lung issues, such things as diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to think of those three, probably diabetes is probably number one and heart condition is number two.
I would say.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean, I'm full scope. I'm like birth to forever old, right? So, I could easily go, somebody has a little skin abscess, and because I have that surgical background, I did a year of surgery at Easton Hospital, a beautiful community program. So I tend to take care of those little kind of things. I might treat a strep throat, and then I might be helping somebody lower their sugar in the next appointment. I might be managing blood pressure. I could be doing a woman's health, preventative pap smear exam. So I definitely have a full range of medical practice.
And I would imagine that weight loss is a big issue these days.
Mm-hmm. We actually, and that's one of the things that my PA does, is we have a little dedicated thing. People are not necessarily part of the practice, but they might be part of our weight loss counseling, and we use like the GLP-2 inhibitors.
What does that mean?
So that's the popular thing. That's your Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, tirzepatide, semaglutide. That's those type of medications, which, prior to these arriving in the market, I've never been a medication-based weight loss doctor. In fact, given the choice between weight loss and exercise, I really like when people exercise because the health benefits are actually greater. But for people who really need a metabolic reset and really need to revamp their diets and their behaviors with the diets, these kind of medications can be life-changing.
So these medications you're talking about, like semaglutide, Wegovy, they were originally designed for diabetic use?
Mm-hmm. And I've been using them for people with diabetes for over 15 years.
And then over the use, they found that people were losing weight without diet modification just on these medications?
That's an interesting thing. So when I first started prescribing these medications 15 years ago, the literature and the reps would say, people are losing 5 to 10 pounds on these. And, and I started using, my patients were losing like 30 or 40 pounds on these. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? And it was because I was telling them things. I was like helping them for success, how the medications would work, engaging them with it. Hey, if you stop drinking your calories, if you stop the Starbucks or you stop the evening cocktails and everything like that, this medication's going to work better. This medication's going to make you feel full sooner, so don't eat what you normally eat. Eat a small. If you've ever tried and struggled with Weight Watchers and feel that you don't have the willpower, I guarantee you have the willpower, it's just going in the right direction. But this medication will make it easier for you to implement that plan and be successful because you'll be in tune with what your body's telling you and how your body feels on that plan, and it won't be the same struggle. It actually is, like using a tool for the job. It won't do the job for you, but it will make the job a joy to do because you're going to enjoy success. You're going to do the right things instead of like 2 weeks later looking at the scale saying, wow, this isn't making a difference. You're going to see progress in real time. It's going to reinforce all the positive changes you're making, and your positive changes are going to be the easiest they've ever been in your life.
So these are non-diabetics that are overweight that are using these medications to lose pounds, but is that a lifetime now? Medical treatment, once you start, you have to stay on it for the rest of your life?
No, you don't. You can transition off of it.
If you don't follow a healthy, good diet plan, and that's a stupid word, diet, actually, a nutritional plan, let's put it that way, will that weight come back?
Yeah, and in fact, you won't have as much success losing it in the first place. And slowly, but it's interesting because, when people are really successful with this, the first person I used for weight loss was over 360 pounds. And over a probably about 15-month period on the medication, he got down to 275. And that was life-changing for him, just life-changing for him. And he went off the medication, and really maybe about 3 years later, he had kind of crept up 15 pounds and said, hey, you know, maybe I'd like to go on it, and this time my goal would be 265. You know, so he kept, and what made it possible is he didn't go back to eating the way that he was that had caused him to be 360 pounds. He kept most of his changes, right? But not quite as extreme. So, you know, and then a third time he started to sneak back up, and he's like, I don't think I need the medication. I think I just need to focus this time. And then he, you know, is living pretty happily at 255.
You know, it's interesting. We tend to bring this stuff home. I mean, people always bring, I call it bad stuff, but it tastes good. Donuts, cookies, candies, whatever, to the office that's sitting around all the time. And you keep staring at it, it's hard to like to resist. Me, for example, if I buy a bag of cookies or potato chips and I put them in the cupboard, I don't even know they're in there, and I don't even think about it. But if I put them on the counter and I open them up, forget about it.
Yeah, you're gonna
They
keep
seem
going
to
back for
they
more.
just seem to disappear. You know, I don't know where they go.
Yeah.
You take one, you walk away, you come back, you take another one, you walk away. You know, so my trick in all this, and I eat pretty well actually. I try to not have processed foods, and I'm not even big on eating out because of the oils they use and so forth. And I try to eat it as organic as I can, as natural as I can. Just try to limit those sugars. My first thing is keep it out of the house. I don't bring it in the house. And then that
Don't
way
have
I'm
the
not thinking about
temptation
it.
right in front of you.
And you know, you do have to have some things on hand in case somebody drops by or whatever. They're locked, you know, put away, and I don't look at them. I don't even, I forget about them.
But you see what that is? That's insight. That is knowing yourself, knowing what stumbling blocks are for you, and setting the field for success. It's like knowing what your triggering thought processes are, and you're setting up the game so you can win, right? And that's a lot of what I feel that I can do in the concierge practice that I didn't have the time and the relationships with people to do in the conventional model, where you're just kind of running people through really fast. Because now I can kind of, you know, we can work together and say, what messes you up, right? Or what helps you be successful? And then we can start to tailor habits, right? So the default habit for you 20 years ago was probably somebody brings the donuts into your office, and you're like, ooh, I'm going to have a donut.
What a treat.
Oh, that was pretty good. I'll have another,
Yeah,
right? And that becomes an automated response.
And then this trick, you just take a little piece of it, and then before you know it, you're taking another little piece of it. Before you know it, the whole thing's gone, you know.
Yeah, it could happen. It
but,
could happen.
Yeah, no, I think I do a pretty good job of watching that. I mean, you have those little periods of time where you may fall out a little bit, especially, I call like Halloween till New Year's Day the eating season. Because everywhere you go, it's all these things you don't normally, well, at least I normally don't consume, but they're there, or they're in your face, you know. But I think if you're reducing it, at least everything's going in your favor. And if you can get to the point where you eliminate it 90% of the time, you're ahead of the curve.
Well, and what's really interesting, because people worry about this, is that if I change my life, if I give up a bad habit, or I go on a journey of making healthier food choices, am I going to be miserable forever? Right? But, you know, and the thing is no, actually, if you are generally eating healthier things and you get into that pattern in life, you will enjoy those healthier things more. And when you have what the Cookie Monster calls the sometimes foods, they're so much more alive. They're so much more enjoyable. So, you know, you can recalibrate the joy in your life, right? You know, and you don't have to be healthy. You do not have to live a life of deprivation, right? It may feel like that when you're starting the journey, but I can promise you that, you know, when you enjoy that better energy and when you don't lose your taste of food. You appreciate the rare treats and the smaller portions in a way that you haven't before.
Yeah, I've come to I try not to eat processed foods at all, you know, very rarely, and like I say, I'm not really even fond of going out a lot.
Yeah, some of them, if you get on a healthy journey, some of them you won't even like anymore.
Yeah.
You'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was making me feel so bad. And I didn't know that tasted so sticky.
And I don't know if we can call this a food or not, but ice cream has always been my weakness since I was a little kid. And you know, it's funny. My sister likes to stop by every once in a while. She'll bring her grandkids, Piper and Clyde, over, and they like a little ice cream.
Yeah.
And it's actual treat. That it's not something they eat every day. And so I wasn't home. My sister said, "Oh, I'm going to bring the kids over for a while," and I said, "Okay, I'll see you later." And then I text back, "Oh, there's ice cream in the basement refrigerator." Now, you know, it had been there I bought it for them.
Yeah.
But I never went and opened it up and everything, you know. And so I guess they each took a bar of ice cream, and I went to see if they did. And it's open, and I didn't go. Gee, two for them and one for me. Because I decided, you know, we're not going to do that anymore. Why? Because it upsets my stomach when I eat it.
Yeah.
So why am I doing that to myself?
Right, right.
You know.
You know, when it comes to, you know, that mindful awareness about like what's good for me, what's not good for me, right? What will bring me health and energy and a good mood, and what is going to drag me down and make me sick and in the cardiologist's office, and right? You know, there are some things that you do that immediately will tell you that they're bad for you. You know, you had shared with me at one point about, you know, your brother brought some friends over when your parents were out of town, right? And they overdid it. They drank and they got sick and they got puking, and you know, that's the body's way of saying this is poison. That's too much. It's not good, right? And that not only probably impacted them, that impacted you as for how you would feel about, you know, and it's the same thing. You know, with our foods, there are some foods that we can eat and we just feel good and we feel good and they were good for us metabolically, right? And there are some foods that we eat that are toxic and we overeat them, and maybe in the immediate future we just kind of feel a little sluggish. And if we're used to feeling sluggish all the time, we don't even notice that, right? But then the health consequences start to come, and you know, the clogging of the arteries and the, you know, premature aging and the obesity and the diabetes and, you know, all the things that, you know, not having a healthy relationship with your intake causes.
Well, there are some people, I think, that live to eat, and other people eat to live.
Do you know where that comes from?
No, I don't.
Do you know how old that is? Take a
I know
stab
it's
at
an
it.
old statement, but I don't know.
Take a stab at how old the phrase
Hippocrates,
is.
I don't know.
It is in the Old Testament.
It is in the Old Testament. That's old.
Yeah, that old. Like the text was probably about 3,000 years old.
I mean, I've gone.
So 3,000 years ago, before we knew anything about processed foods, before we had a food marketing industry to like make everything as good as possible, somebody had to write it down that says you should be eating to live, i.e. fuel your body and take good care of it, as opposed to living to eat for the next gluttonous thing. Think about that for a minute.
I've been on trips with people, and you're out to breakfast, and like, where are we going for lunch? we just sat down for breakfast. So you know what category they fall into, you know. But you know, I guess there's a lot of pleasure in food.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because, you know, when people tell me about their travels, and I love to share about people's travels, right? There are some people that say, oh my gosh, we saw these floors in Morocco, and you know, they were made like 3,000 years ago, and you know, just the artistry, and they're showing me all those pictures. And then, yeah, there's other people who'd be like, oh, we ate here, and this is what we had.
Well, they take pictures of their food and post them.
Right. So, you know, there's definitely where does it fit in my life and my mind kind of thing.
So this past October, I was in Arizona, and Dr. Plute and her husband Woody were coming to Arizona. We met up, and I said, where do you want to go to eat? She says, someplace light and healthy. I got the place for that. And it was a nice meal, cooked well, healthy, natural.
Right.
You know.
Well, and we've been talking about food so you brought up this social aspect, because we've been talking about food in the nutritional sense, right? The good nutrition versus the bad nutrition. But there is this another dimension about the emotional sense of food, right? So, you know, where do we get together? Well, it's interesting, like the whole world would probably be better off if you would have said, oh, you're coming into town, where do you want to go hike at? Right.
I had already hiked that morning.
Right, you already had, right? You know, and again, socially by convention, we kind of start out with this breaking of the bread sort of thing, where when we're emotionally bonding with people, we share food together.
That's an extreme point, because I can really relate to that. When I went through all my abdominal surgeries and just briefly lost half my small intestine, and I went 5 years of actually not eating. And looked probably like a Holocaust victim. But I would go to all these social events, and I looked anorexic, but I couldn't eat.
Right.
I was on a liquid diet only, and it was the most uncomfortable situation, because everybody's eating, and you're sitting there, and they deliver you a plate of food, and you're like playing with it, because you can't eat it. And they're all looking at you like, you're like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Well, and it's
so
interesting.
that was the first time I ever realized how social food is.
And there's a lot of emotional components to it too. You know, my husband and I grew up in two extreme different food cultures, right? And in his family, food is love. Love
I
is
know
food.
how Woody grew up. I don't know how you grew up, but
so you're gonna love this. So in his family, food is love. Love is food, right? And if, you know, they would have dinner on the dot, 5 o'clock every night. And if you were late for dinner, you better have a reason, because mom was putting it on the table, right? And if you didn't have seconds, are you okay? Do you not like the food? Are you sick? Right, and you could see there's this emotional anxiety, not just what am I eating, but what's going on with what everybody else is eating, you know? And I'm like, no, I'm full. It was delicious, right? I just happened to be a one-serving kind of girl. And then after dinner, like everybody would, you know, convene in front of the media, because we're still on the media topic, right? And you would start watching the TV, and then beautiful flame-broiled Applebee's stuff would appear on the screen. Now, it's only been 20 minutes since dinner, right? So somebody goes out to the kitchen and they're announcing, I'm getting some chips, who wants some? And even if nobody says anything, they're bringing back a full bowl, and it's there, so you eat it, right? And, you know, and then I'll be like, don't you want any chips? And I'm like, well, no, I just had it. So the first time that Woody goes to dinner at my family's house, it's a whole different experience. He's like, what time is dinner? And I'm like, whenever my mom's done cooking it. And he's like, well, what time will that be? And I'm like, well, it depends on what she's cooking and what time she started. Right? So when she's done, she announces that it's dinner time. And you know, growing up, it would be things like, okay, so dinner's ready. And somebody would say, oh yeah, I'll be there as soon as I finish changing the oil, and let me finish this chapter of the book. Like, so finally people get to, and then you would hear my mother say, well, okay, I'm making your plate, and if it's cold, that's your problem. Right?
No, she wasn't out there ringing that bell that far, was she?
No, but yeah, very similar to that. And you would get your plate, and it would have how much you needed to eat on it. And I mean, she would calculate this stuff out. Her thought process is what. So if the guys were working a heavier job, she knew they didn't really want lunch, or they would just want something really light, but their dinner would be a little heavier. right? And she had it figured out to a size of a third of a chicken breast when she was making a menu for a group of people, like what people needed to eat. Like a kid this big eats a third, and a kid this big eats a half, right?
It was a
and,
science.
You know, and Woody's mother would figure out what people might want to eat. So it would be like, they might want 2 chicken breasts, and they might not like chicken, so we'll have to make them steak too. So her menus were like, and then, but the kicker is like after the meal, you know, we go out, we're watching some TV. The media puts on, you know, the Whopper flame broiled burger, and the food's crackling on there. So one of my brothers goes out, he gets to the kitchen, he gets this little bowl, he puts some chips in it, and he comes back to the living room and starts eating the chips. And my husband says to me, "That's kind of rude. Like, why didn't your brother get chips for all of us?" I'm like, he thinks that if you want chips, you'll go out and get them. You know, so that food culture, right? And like I said, for a mother.
Well, that's an example of eating to live and living to eat.
Yeah, that's an example of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But that food culture is because for people who, you know, are preparing, and even me, even though, you know, food has a very functional place just because of my cultural history with food in my family, you know, it's still, if somebody doesn't eat the food that I made, like, I start to feel a little nervous or anxious. And as one of my children, you do as a mother, there's this instinctual, what if they're sick? What if something's wrong? Like, you just feel good when people are eating your food and eating a lot of it. So there is a very cultural thing. And I think in our present day culture, when people are often entertained by the media, whether it's, you know, the phone or the laptop or the watching of the TV, we're used to being entertained. We're not necessarily learning how to find joy. And food becomes just like, you know, alcohol or, you know, addictive drugs can become a part of how you feel better, right? So food can become this thing that if you're not having the skills and the abilities and the quality of relationships in your, you know, immediate circle and extended circles, if you're not getting emotionally fulfillment there, you may be seeking for emotional fulfillment in your food experiences. Yeah. Whether that's food experiences with people or private food experiences, we may be, some of our joy seeking may have turned to that, and that's when suddenly you start doing things that don't make a lot of sense for your body.
These medications for weight loss, diabetes control, if I wanted to lose 5 pounds, would I want to be on that medication, or is it a certain amount of weight to lose?
So we see people very individually with questions like that, you know, because if you would like to lose 5 pounds, but you're already at your ideal body weight or underweight, like, no, that's a horrible idea, right? If you are a middle-aged woman with polycystic ovarian disease that has fatty liver disease, all of a sudden it's not just about that 5 pounds, but it's about some metabolic regulation to help prevent diabetes and stuff like that. Yeah. So the question about these medicines, is there an absolute weight or an absolute goal or something like that? It's, you know, again, like everything else I do, it's not automatic or rote for me. It's customized. I explore, I learn, and then I kind of put my, you know, knowledge and experience together with it, and you know, and then talk through what else is going on with that person's life, because they might say, I want to lose these 5 pounds, and if, you know, they're doing Starbucks every morning, I can say, I have a cheaper way for you to lose 5 pounds, where, you know, you won't have to pay for the medication, and actually you'll stop paying for something else, and you'll have more money in your pocket, so you can go to the beach in the wintertime when you're
Dr. Plute, we're at our break already. We'll be back with Dr. Plute on the Dr. Ed Show. Welcome back to Dr. Ed Show. I'm Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and we're here with Dr. Rebecca Plute. Hopefully, making you think. That's the idea. We don't like to tell you what to do because we don't diagnose nor do we treat. I mean, on this show.
Yeah, not on the show.
We do in our private practices, and it's probably a good idea to bring this up. I am a patient of Dr. Plute, so Dr. Plute is a patient of mine. So just so that we're upfront about that. Plus, we're good friends. And we can talk and talk and talk. So, you know, you have such a diverse practice. Not only are you treating high blood pressures and diabetes and weight loss and heart conditions, and those are things that are pretty paramount with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But you have a prettier side to your practice, and you have a whole. It's office within an office, I guess is the best way to describe it. And you do some aesthetic work there. And, you know, self-esteem is a big one. Because if you don't like yourself, nobody else will like you. That's my thought.
This is a whole area of passion for me. You know, people's identity, their self-perception, how they believe they're, you know, perceived by others. On one of our earlier segments, I talked that one of the shortcomings of our whole behavioral health model right now is it gives people diseases and makes them feel, you know, stigmatized and yucky about themselves, when really it should be focused on whatever they're struggling with, right? But that whole identity, who am I? What am I here for? What value do I have? That becomes increasingly important as we develop in the human being, and it can be incredibly empowering. We were meant to be attractive people. Like, I just think people are beauty. I can, you know. So, you know, when I was first in medical school, there was a lady that worked in the medical student support office. And she had just tremendous, terrible scarring. And she underwent a ablative laser treatment, which was like a big, extensive thing, like 6 weeks to recover. But when she recovered from that, the improvements in her skin, she looked phenomenal. And that in itself, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Maybe I want to do that someday. But even more impressive was the transformation in her, the level of confidence she felt. Because prior to having that, she believed there was a thing in her head that this is what people see. They see this yucky skin. This is what they see when they're talking to me.
And then when you change that, it's your reward as well.
Yeah. So in my own practice, you know, I've been doing all the medical things, and about 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to get involved in purchase a laser. So I began to do that, and it's nice because we can do the convenient things like, you know, total laser hair removal, which is really great for people who get sweaty under the armpits and they're getting those little pustules and abscesses. It solves that. It's incredibly convenient not to have to, you know, shave everything all the time. So the laser is great. The removal of sun damage and help prevention of skin cancer that we do with our IPL laser is great. And we do fine lines and wrinkles and give a little fresh to people's faces. And I love that aspect of it.
So when Dr. Plute says she purchases a laser, that's like purchasing a very, very, very fancy car.
No, it's more like a house.
I was going to say that, except that I think the houses today have like skyrocketed, you know, like crazy. But we're not talking like pocket change here.
No,
these are really expensive units.
The highest laser in the industry.
Yeah, they're very expensive, and you're not going to find one on every street corner.
Yeah, but I love doing it, and you know, for that reason itself, it's worth the investment. Because for some people, they'll say, well, that beauty's the vanity. And one of the things with my staff, you know, we're not into the upselling, oh, you need this, oh, you need this, oh, have you noticed that this is going on?
And that happens a
lot. Right, that's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is more is, you wake up in the morning and you look in your face, and that's how we start, right? We're gonna start by brushing our teeth. We look in the face in the mirror. How am I doing? And when we do a little thing that gives people a little up, they feel a little fresher, they feel a little younger, or we've taken care of, you know, a skin problem like their rosacea that was red and angry all the time when they woke up in the morning, and they're like, wow, I look good today, I'm gonna have a good day.
Gee, you stole that from me.
What?
That's what when I see people with gum disease that isn't really quite gone to full-blown gum disease is beginning, I say, your gums are a little bit angry.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, right, because that is like, our body, whether it's our skin or our gums, right, it can feel angry and inflamed, just like our tempers can. If things are not going well, or if, the wrong irritants are bothering them, or it's not getting the attention it needs.
So does a person have to be a patient in the other side of your practice to come in and do this, or
No.
they can be just in to come in for the aesthetic work?
Yeah, and that's on my website too, at ParagonPersonalHealthcare.com. If you go to the Skin Revival side, you can see all the different services that we offer there.
So hair laser removal, how many treatments on an average laser removal?
About 4 or 5.
4. So what you're doing is changing the growth pattern with the laser. Is that what happens?
This is the most fascinating technology. You ever wear a black t-shirt in the sun?
Yeah.
Right? What happens? The color black, absorbs all that light and converts it to heat. Whereas if you wear a white t-shirt, the white is reflecting the light away, so the material doesn't get very hot. So IPL stands for intense pulse laser, right? So you have a really, really bright light, and you make it the color that is best absorbed by black and brown hairs. And then the light is so bright and intense, when the light gets converted to heat, it actually cooks the hair, and it will cook the follicle that the hair is growing out of.
But not the skin.
But not the skin. That's the trick with lasers, whether we're removing brown spots or we're addressing red spider vein vessel type things. You want to be in a light spectrum where your target perfectly absorbs the light, but your surrounding skin, the light just passes through or reflects off of it.
So if you're very blonde or gray, this is not going to really take care of those light.
Right. If they're white hairs or super light blonde hairs, it's not. If they're medium brown to black, we got it.
Is there any technology for people that have gray hair they want removed? Or?
Electrolysis.
Oh, that's the old-fashioned.
That's the old-fashioned way of doing it.
Zapping.
Yeah, I actually got a lead recently on somebody who does electrolysis, or somebody who's going to school for it. So I'm hoping to be able to offer that service.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty hard to find anymore because everybody switched over to the laser.
Yeah.
So you can do this pretty much at anywhere on the body.
Wherever it's needed.
Yeah. So if someone is growing a little stash here and they don't want it anymore, you can zap all those little hairs out of there.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's kind of neat. The crystal that we use for it is about yay big, and you just put the crystal on the skin where the problem is, and you fire the laser.
And is it painful at all?
Somewhat.
Yeah, because
it's
of
so
that.
Worth it.
Because of that heat. Do you use some type of anesthesia? Topical?
Yeah, we use a topical anesthetic for hair removal, just kind of cooling the skin off before. And the laser head itself, if we hold it on the skin long enough, has a coolant running through it, so that crystal is so cold that we trick the nervous system a little bit. The nervous system can only send so many messages at once, right? So when we're sending the message that, oh geez, this is really cold, that's when we sneak the laser fire in, because the spinal cord and the brain are so busy processing the cold signal that it really cuts down how much pain signal
That sounds like
process.
It's ridiculous, but it's absolutely the truth.
It is true. You know this
I
as
do
a
it all the
dentist.
time. Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah, only a mean dentist.
There are some procedures I do the injection is probably more painful than what the little procedure is. And if you pulse that drill, they'll fill the first one, not fill the second or the third one.
Yeah.
So, and people and then they go, oh, I didn't feel that.
Yeah, it's part of the art.
Yeah.
It's part of the art.
It's really kind of interesting. So, laser, pretty effective, non-invasive. What's the average length of a treatment? Like the treatments you said 3, 4, 5, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, probably about 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
I mean, like everything else I do, we schedule people a half hour to an hour slot to, do pre-pictures and get them settled and answer all the questions they have. I'm a big, as you know, empowerment person, and knowledge is power. And, everybody has a different amount of knowledge that they need to know how things work on some level so that they can work with it and, so that they're prepared
Plus,
for
it's
what changes.
It's a lot of
they may go
foreign
through.
terms that
Yeah.
you have to kind of get to explain and understand, and then that has to sink in and stay.
Yeah, and anxiety, which is at new heights in our culture, like it's amazing to me, like what has happened with anxiety in our culture, right? One of the best reductions of anxiety is when people know what's going to happen next, and they're comfortable with that process. So that's part of what we do there, is we get people informed, they know what to expect next, they're comfortable in the process, they're not surprised by anything. And anxiety has become something I've become very interested in, because we've got all these media sources that are elevating people's anxieties. You've got all these people whose anxieties will turn into anger and violence in our society and everything like that. But it all starts with anxiety, so I'm very in tune with, if somebody's feeling anxious, how can we reduce anxiety? So it's great, like you can come and you can get your face brightened by me, but at the same time, you can get your anxiety levels reduced too, because as you're learning how to get less anxious about this procedure that may be uncomfortable or painful, you're also learning how to get less anxious about other things that may be bothering you in your life. So lots going on in my office.
Yeah, for sure. So, and it's kind of like a rubber band snap?
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because for some people, depending on, everybody's wired a little bit differently.
Yep.
And for some people, they're very hyper-aesthetic, that sting really bothers them. For other people, like they don't even notice the sting, but just the fact that light is so bright, like just like a flashlight, the light travels through your hand, that light's so bright that it's going to travel like, we don't think ourselves as transparent, but we are. It'll travel through your skin, through your muscles, through your bones and your sinuses, and you'll actually see those flashes even though your eyes are completely shielded with these metal shields. You're still going to see flashes of light. And for some people's nervous system, it just doesn't like that.
People don't realize how conductive we are. One of my headsets is actually bone conduction, so they're not even in my ears.
Yeah.
They're resting behind my ears.
Right.
But I'm hearing beautiful sound because the vibrations are being picked up by my eardrum through my bones.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting how all of that works.
I love the human body. There's so many cool things about it.
Anatomy was actually my favorite class. I loved anatomy. But we're incredible beings. We really are. People don't realize how incredibly we are.
Yeah, we're like
put together,
amazingly designed.
Yeah,
like fearfully and wonderfully. It's so incredible.
No by chance here. This was put together to work.
And I think one of the saddest things that can happen to people is when they get so focused on an area of discomfort in their life, or a mental thought process becomes so consuming that they forget how wonderful they're made and how many good things could just happen tomorrow. Like this whole thing, the way it works, right? You could do totally the wrong thing, and by grace, it actually helps somebody else. I love when that happens. When we do like alcohol recovery and stuff, somebody will be like, I messed my life up. I hurt all these other people. Like, what's the point of me making it better now? And I'm like, well, if you're going to AA, at some point you get to mentor somebody and help them out before it gets as bad as it got with you, right? You may have gone through the difficulty, you may have made the mistakes that you made, but we were made with such a capacity for healing and ability to connect with each other and help each other with the experiences we have. I guarantee you I could take any experience you have and you can translate that into something that might benefit humanity for generations, right? So everything about us, who we're created, how we're created, is amazing. And to me, the greatest tragedy of the world is when people think they were made messed up. It's like they're struggling with anxiety. They don't know that we've been struggling with anxiety for thousands of years. And like there's books written about it. There's whole cultures that rose or fell because the culture learned how to deal with anxiety, right? It's not a unique thing, but it feels unique when it's in your face and you're carrying the burden and you're trying to work through these thoughts and you think that you'll be like this the rest of all your life and that's how you're made. And that's not true at all.
So part of the anxiety could be the fact that you don't think you look good, or you have this little defect here, or whatever. So you're able to reduce those, eliminate those. Just to finish the laser hair treatment, how often can you do that?
Typically, we have people come in every 4 to 6 months, depending on what hair we're treating on. What we do is none of our hair is growing all at once. Like some of it will be active and growing and other follicles will be dormant. But the laser can only get the ones that are actively growing, right? So depending on whether we're not doing facial or we're doing armpits or we're doing bikini or legs, we look at the hair growth cycle and we try to like do the timing so that we can catch hairs that weren't growing the last time we did it.
So what about having it done? I just was in the Bahamas for a week and I'm tanned.
You have to wait until you're not tan anymore.
Because of those lights
because
will
of
pick
that
up.
intense pulse light is going to be absorbed by the brown in your skin, and you have an increased chance
So
of skin
darker skin
scorching.
people, it's probably not a good idea to have laser treatment.
There is, that's kind of on my next bolt. There's always something next with me. So the next laser I purchase is better for people that have heavily pigmented skin and want hair removal. Mine can do it, and it's kind of interesting when we do have somebody with darker skin. I will do them and do all the settings for the estheticians because it's a little different than our standard lighter person's skin.
Yeah, so there's always little nuances that you have to figure out before you can do that.
Yeah, you got to stay involved with it. You know, you can't. I'm not an autopilot kind of person. Some things can go on autopilot, but when it comes to people and how they feel and how they look and what their health is, I'm usually going to be pretty involved.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met two identical people, so even identical twins are different.
Well, it's interesting in the healthcare industry, and this is how we've got a little bit of the messiness to both the behavioral health model and the conventional medicine model, is the idea is that we could produce, we could manufacture, we could standardize care. But we ain't making pencils here, right? These are people's lives, and I do believe we can manufacture everything else in the world except for care. So if we want to do medical, the reason those two words evolved together and we call it medical care or we call it dental care is because the care has to be there. It should have already told all these big CEOs and like health college professors and stuff like that, but guess what? You can't manufacture this one.
Otherwise a robot could do it.
Right. You actually have to care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And part of caring, right, becomes feeling confident and becomes feeling competent. And, you know, getting back when you start your day, you know, if we made your skin a little bit better, then you're like, well, if my skin can get better, maybe I can get a little more efficient at the job. I love it. And if I'm a little more efficient at the job, guess what happens next? I like my job a little bit better because I can do it maybe a little bit in a way that nobody else can, right? So there it becomes, you can just start with somebody's personal appearance, give them a little nudge there, and really have it blossom into their whole person.
Well, you know, I can address that from my experience. I've actually seen people's personalities change.
When you fix their teeth?
When I fix their teeth. I've seen them, they've had missing teeth and now they have a bridge there where they wouldn't even smile before. But I've seen changes from the first time I met them, totally different people.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite patients hadn't had teeth for 50 years.
Wow.
She was afraid, she needed some extractions.
Yeah.
I made these teeth for her. She started crying. I'm thinking, what did I do?
What did you do?
She was so happy. She was crying like a baby.
Wow.
And I get a Christmas card every year from her. Wow. You know, it's just amazing. You see what you can do for somebody.
Yeah.
You know. So let's say I have rosacea, which is fairly common.
Yeah, very common.
Is this the same laser that you do hair removal? Does the removal of the
So it's kind
rosacea?
of the same machine, but a different crystal. So it's a different color light.
Okay. So different wavelength, different energy.
Yeah. So, you know, I'll speak of it in colors because that's the easiest way. But, right, there's wavelengths of, you know, for if any of our audience here is in physics class, you know, there's different wavelengths. And, you know, certain materials will absorb, like white is very reflective, black is very absorptive, right? And if we want to get something that's not white or black, we just have to figure out what the wavelength of that is and what the wavelength of the color of light that we want to hit it with. And outside of the light spectrum, because I have one laser that is invisible light, So we, that whole technology is really based in a science there.
So if somebody has, let's say, an age spot,
Mm-hmm.
which is discoloration that often in the sun side from a car
Mm-hmm.
window,
Yeah.
you can help remove those?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always interesting because when people have generalized sun damage on their face, their left side always has more from driving typically, right? So the red and browns are actually very, very similar to each other in the human skin anyway spectrum. So the laser that we use for that tends to be like a yellow-green laser. The hairs, which are darker blacks and stuff, the laser that we tend to do that is much more of a red-looking laser. So yeah, it's definitely color-based.
Is there any like pre-prep work that a patient does before they come into the office to have these treatments done?
There's certain things like we don't want people using abrasives or retin-A's and those kind of things for a couple weeks. We use them for, that reminds me, acne treatments as well. Here's an interesting thing. The little bacteria have little packages of pigment inside them called chromophores. So if somebody's having an acute acne breakout, they can come in. We can do like a low energy setting, but it's enough to like explode the little packages and reduce the amount of bacteria that is in their active acne breakout and help their body get back a foothold on destroying that bacteria. And we also have another laser that helps the glands function a little bit healthier and be less distorted, and so that the oil production on the skin normalizes too. So we also do some acne treatment with that as well.
Yeah, and that's, there used to be something you never saw before was adult acne, but I think you see a lot of that, a lot more now than you did before. Usually it's that teenage acne that you see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But people are getting this
And you
adult
can have
acne.
both. Yeah, you can have it in an adult or as a teenager.
Yeah.
And we certainly treat a full range of we go all the way from teenagers to, often, 50-year-old, 60-year-old people are still sometimes struggling with acne. And we can usually, within 3 or 4 treatments, we can knock that down pretty good.
So the wrinkle treatment,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually go in there with this laser and what do you do? Regenerating new collagen? Is that what's happening with the...
So I love working with what is already true about the body, right? So if the skin gets damaged or cut, the body's response is you have this whole hormonal cascade of events, right? Where there's damage, just from that damage, chemical signals start to happen and they activate your fibroblasts. Your fibroblasts are then like, oh, we got to lay down collagen and elastin and cross-link all this stuff, right? So if we cut the skin, it'll tighten a surgical wound back together, right? But the one machine I have is a radio frequency machine. It will heat the dermis, interestingly, to like fever temperatures. So about...
Fever's a repair.
Right, fever is it becomes, the temperature itself will trigger enzymes in the body to kick into repair mode. So all we have to do is keep the skin at 102 to 104 degrees for 5 minutes continuously, and that will turn on the repair mechanism for the next 6 months. Is the same if we had
Incredible.
cut it. And one of the lasers that we do that goes dermis actually, will burn tiny pinpoint holes like in the subdermal layer that does the same thing, only a little bit more powerfully.
Dr. Plute, we're at the end of the show. We're jumping ahead here just for a second here, and we'll announce this in a future date. We'll do another show on it. And of course, you can always listen to Dr. Plute on my radio show through our archives at rumble.com. But I'm going to be doing something jointly with Dr. Plute here in the very near future. We're very excited about that, but we'll make that announcement when the time is necessary. My office keeps bothering me here. But anyway, how do people get a hold of Dr. Rebecca Plute?
You can call my office at 724-746-7030. You can browse on my website, and there's a contact form on there at paragonpersonalhealthcare.com.
Medical care, aesthetic care, incredible. I'll offer it in Canonsburg,
Mm-hmm.
Central Avenue, right now currently inside Jeffrey's Drugstore.
Yep.
But you have your own entrance.
I have my own entrance.
Yeah. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
It's
you.
always
It's
my
such
pleasure.
a pleasure, such a joy.
Remember, a healthy pet is a happy pet. When you're healthy, you're happy as well. And you can even look better for improving that health and wellness. You can always listen to me live on AM 1250, The Answer Pittsburgh, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we are always archived on Rumble, X, Spotify, iTunes. We're out there. God bless. We'll talk to you next time.